Hello and welcome to another edition of My Media Life, brought to you by the World Media Group. My name is Arif Durrani, and each edition we'll be talking to some of the most interesting and insightful media and marketing leaders from around the world, with some tips on careers and their advice to those starting out today. So do stay tuned. Today, I'm really delighted to be joined by Nicky Owen, the Global Head of Marketing Initiatives and Advertising at investment bank Credit Suisse. Nicky, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to speak to you and see you again. It's been a while since we worked together.
It has been a while. Now, Nicky, you mentioned we've worked together. So you've actually worked with many of the world's leading international media brands. So I know there's lots of people sort of really interested in your take on what the media industry means to you today. So maybe if we could just start by saying a little bit about your career, what you're responsible for at Credit Suisse and how long you've been there.
So I joined Credit Suisse. For those of you that may not know, Credit Suisse is an international investment and wealth management bank. We are headquartered in Zurich, but I'm based in London. But I look after the global marketing and advertising initiatives that we do across the bank. Some of that covers the brand itself, and some of that is to do with specific divisions. So, for example, we do partnerships that may be around sustainability. We do advertising around sustainability. We also do activity around investment bank, our securities research division, and so on. So it's quite a lot of variety within the role.
Yeah, and it's a truly global remit as well, isn't it? Your tentacles reach far and wide.
Yes, exactly. So it's a fantastic opportunity to work with people. So I have colleagues who are based predominantly in Zurich, London, Poland, and also New York. But we work with global partners on content partnerships, and like we said, on advertising and those kind of things as well.
And as an investment bank more than 160 years old, we should say that sort of entrepreneurialism is at the heart of what Credit Suisse is about. Is that right?
Yeah, we were founded by Alfred Escher, who was himself a Swiss entrepreneur, and that spirit kind of carries through, I think, well, hopefully in terms of what we do. We also did a lot of work in terms of how big a part that plays within our brand, and we found that the qualities of entrepreneurs are those that are shared by many of my colleagues and employees around the bank. We have about 50,000 employees, and also with our clients as well. Many of them are entrepreneurs themselves. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Nicky. So to begin with the first official question, what does the media industry mean to you?
The media industry is, I think, it's a perfect combination to me. I was bullied a little bit at university into trying to have a career in accountancy, and I had placements in my long summer breaks at university in accountancy firms, which I did enjoy, but realised my heart wasn't really in it. And I think that the media industry is a perfect combination of creativity and bringing that that sense of kind of developing and creating, whether that's advertising or kind of plans or content, but also having then all the numbers as well. So to my mind, it was more creative than accountancy, but it also had some of that kind of rigor and analytics. So to me, I think it's a fantastic industry to be in. I've worked in the industry, I'm going to show my age now. I've been in the industry since end of 97. So coming up for 25 years, and it's evolving. So it's always changing, but at the heart of it is understanding people, understanding numbers and using numbers to tell stories, storytelling itself, and kind of just bringing that together for me, I've always worked on international side. So being able to do that and understand different cultures, and work with people from different cultures has been really stimulating. So I can't think of a better industry, regardless of what you're studying at university, or if you're kind of early in your career. There will be an opportunity within this industry for you to find something that you can be really passionate about.
That's great. Thank you. Really positive. And so what's one piece of advice that has helped during your career, do you think?
May I have more than one piece of advice?
Yes.
Over my career, because my career's been quite long, because of my age. Then there's been a few things that have stuck in my mind over the years. I think as a new starter, I remember I started off at JWT, so J. Walter Thompson, which doesn't as a brand exist anymore. But I really wanted to work in planning. That's how I started off as a planner. Again, because of that kind of, I guess, the strategy and the creativity coming together. So I met and researched the industry when I was at university, and my first boss said, always take the meeting notes. So from day one, always take the meeting notes. And I think that was really helpful, because if you don't have something to say, certainly starting out in your career, then you've got an excuse because you're writing. You can kind of clarify if someone's made a point. So again, you just have a role to play within the meeting, and then you're then sending that to your clients afterwards. So again, you have that contact, you start to build your relationship from day one.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. And I say it to people in my team now, always kind of, they're very, in some ways they might seem very dull, but kind of contact reports and status notes and things are just your way of keeping track of projects and keeping you at the heart of keeping them managed. So that was the first piece of advice that I think still holds true today. As a woman, I also had a really interesting piece of advice that was from a WACL event that I attended, again, fairly early on in my career. And it was women in the media industry who've been very successful, who were giving advice to other women. And one of the pieces of advice, which sounds quite strange, but I can't remember who it was who said it, but it stuck with me, was whistle. So sometimes if you get frustrated, your throat closes up. So if you're maybe a bit on the back foot in a meeting, or it's not going how you want it to, or you're in a negotiation and it's maybe getting a bit heated, if you can breathe out, or even better, go to the sort of leave the room and kind of have a good whistle, your throat opens up and you get your voice back. And if you get your voice back, you get your confidence back, and you start to get your control back. And it sounds a really, really simple, maybe very sort of silly piece of advice, but actually, it was one that has stuck in my mind. And then I guess another thing that someone said is kind of focus on your people skills. If you have a client or a colleague and you see something that you think might be of interest to them, just send it. Just be helpful to people, remember names, smile, have conversations, and people do business with people. And so actually, again, if things are going well, then that's great. If they're not going so well, if you've got a good, strong relationship to base that negotiations on, then you will just be in a stronger position. So don't forget the soft skills.
Yeah, that's all really good pieces of advice. The whistle one rings true. Voice coaches always talk about breathing, and I think it's your whistling technique sings to the same piece actually, which is controlling your breath. The making notes piece is really interesting. As someone who grew up as a journalist writing notes, I was always amazed how much more, if ever you want to know what's gone on at a conference, talk to a reporter during the break time, because actually the process of writing and listening intently really makes you understand and comprehend what's going on more than passive listening, for sure. That's really interesting. Thank you. Okay. The next question, what's your favorite thing about your current job?
The variety. I think the variety, I think I've got quite a low boredom threshold, just generally. So I think having lots of variety. And I think one of the things that I was worried about when I went from being agency side to client side was, would I still get that variety? Obviously, in an agency, you're dealing with different accounts, and so I worked across several accounts at the same time, and so you're kind of always having kind of variety. And I think I was a little bit worried, but I needn't have bothered. I mean, actually my days are very varied, and I think the other thing that's really interesting is I don't know all the answers, so I'm always learning. I find it very interesting, and it's lovely to be able to build and have a confidence that you certainly you know what you're doing, but at the same time to not be arrogant and think that you know everything. And so I think for me, having a stimulating place to work where I'm have lots of different things each day, but also that I'm learning along the way from other people or from new situations or from the industry itself changing. Nothing stays still. So financial services industry is fascinating because it's on a huge journey, And our organisation is, Credit Suisse has been a place to, it's changed, it's always kind of restructuring, and so nothing stays the same. So I think for me, that is really important, that sense of, lifelong learning, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Thank you. It rings true as well. I remember so a study we did with you around entrepreneurial mindsets actually found curiosity and openness to new ideas was right up there as a common trait among entrepreneurially minded, successful people. So it's something which you obviously bring through to your own job, which is interesting. Okay, what's your personal secret talent?
This is a tricky one, because I think if you have a talent, then it tends to not be secret, but people see it, hopefully, so it comes out there. However, I would say one thing is to celebrate success in others. So I like to think, I hope that I can not only celebrate success in my own career, but also celebrate it in others. I think if you have a generous spirit, then it pays back to you. So, I take time to mentor people. I take time to try and help understand the career path of others who are maybe at different stages in their career, try and support others. And it will always make me feel good as well. So that investment in other people pays back. And I think, if you're kind and you are interested in others, then also people tend to, I think, pay it back to you. So I would hope that my talent, maybe secret, not so secret, is that ability to celebrate success when you see it in other people and to try and stimulate that as well. And, ultimately, I have worked in consultancy before, and, you learn as a consultant that you only have your own hours to sell. And actually, if you can maximize and kind of delegate and share the workload with others, then you can, exponentially sell lots of hours. So actually, it's commercially important as well. But I think, personally, I feel it's really important to bring other people on, I think, and not just kind of keep things to yourself. Yeah,
great. And with that paying back ethos in mind, very much related to that, what advice would you give to someone starting out in a career in marketing or media today?
I'd say don't have preconceptions, don't make decisions on something. So I think, you could have a really interesting sector or client that you're working with, but the job might not be so interesting, or the job might be really interesting in what you think is a dull sector. I think one of the biggest learnings that I made was, don't have an excuse that, it's okay for them because they're in a really interesting industry, or it's okay for them because they've got a really good job. Take ownership yourself. And a great example of this was, I worked on a project, it was in consultancy, that was with a company that manufactured concrete slabs. Mm-hmm. So not what would come to mind first when you're thinking about innovation projects. Absolutely. It was an innovation task. However, they were probably one of the most open-minded, forward-thinking organizations I'd ever worked with. And so this whole idea about, it's okay if you're in, I don't know, new drinks development or whatever. Actually, don't take that you can't bring those skills and that knowledge into whatever you're working on. So I'd say, be really open-minded. Don't close down industries that or sectors that you think might be dull, because actually you can probably find something super interesting in whatever it is that you're doing. And it might also be something that you hadn't thought of. And so again, going back to the point about learning, you can, it just opens up the world to you rather than closing it down.
Yeah, no, absolutely great advice. Find the interesting in anything, even the mundane. One of my favorite projects had to do with soda carbonate, soda ash, and it was just a really fascinating project from beginning to end. Really good answer. Thank you. Now, okay, looking at thinking about the media itself, and I know you've partnered with loads of global media brands in your time. Where do you get your daily news from?
So I am a bit of a news junkie, I guess. And so I love, in the morning, I kind of switch on. So I would have BBC News on, either the news channel itself, or some kind of breakfast TV whilst we've kind of got the kids getting them ready for school and things. Mm-hmm. So I kind of tend to sort of steer to, I guess, BBC for news and Channel 4 as well in the evening, watch Channel 4 News. In terms of other publications that are sort of slightly broader, I guess, current affairs, The Economist, definitely, Time, Financial Times as well. And I've set up a lot of alerts. I think, like everyone, we don't have enough hours in the day, and it'd be lovely to just sit there and absorb news. But I've sort of got, so I get alerts from Wall Street Journal, the FT, Moral Money for me, because I spend a lot of time on sustainability, so Moral Money is a really good one for me. Like Wall Street Journal, get their marketing. So again, kind of picking different newsletters for different aspects of my role. I think I guess the business staples like CNBC and Bloomberg, obviously kind of that's where we met, but looking at those for kind of, I guess, the ongoing and the real-time streaming. Also a lot of I guess sort of the more in-depth programs. So I listen to some of the CNBC podcasts and so on. If I'm doing my gardening, I tend to put a podcast on whilst I'm doing my kind of relaxing things. So I guess it kind of comes from it's having to be broad but also curated, because I just don't have the time to be scrolling through all the things. I tend to need to cut to the headlines and then dive into things where I'm a bit more interested. So there's lots of alerts set up across all my things to try and manage that.
Yeah, really good international media mix there, and mainly digital media, I guess. Are there any hard copies there?
Well, my Sunday Times. So Sunday Times is my ritual. So I make a proper, as a northerner, I have to kind of drink lots of cups of tea or I fall over. So I have a big pot of tea on a Sunday and sit there and cover to cover, and my children know not to disturb me whilst I'm reading the Sunday Times. It's really, my husband he just finds it very strange that I have the paper version of it. It's delivered to the house, but he keeps saying, like, just do it on your iPad, but it's not the same. It has to be laid out on the table with my tea, and it has been, I've done that for many years, and I find it's a really good roundup of lifestyle recipes through to business, through to investments, etc. So so kind of Sunday Times is probably the most enjoyable out of everything that I do. Also, the other place that I go to, which I put in my diary actually, is Harvard Business Review. So every month I will have a coffee and have a look on it. I every single time I go on it, I find something that I can learn and apply, which is quite rare, I think, these days. So Harvard Business Review is probably another one that, career-wise and also just in terms of people management and so on, I find really helpful.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you. I know lots of people with that similar Sunday Times habit as well. So it's still going strong. It gets the pace right, doesn't it, for the end of the week or the beginning of the week, depending on how you view these things. Okay. And related to that, which media brands are most important to you? I guess this question it opens up to more of a lifestyle side of things if you have them, but maybe the Sunday Times is your answer to that.
Yeah, because I think Sunday Times, the Harvard Business Review, I guess the BBC, and and Netflix. I guess sort of certainly over the last few years, I think the ability to watch whenever also fits into lifestyles. I have to say, I think with the last couple of years, interestingly, even though working from home, you certainly work far more hours. So I think being able to kind of watch where and when, just to get a bit of relaxation, also become, it seems frivolous, but it is actually a really important part of just that kind of disconnection from your work in the evenings. And then obviously social media. So LinkedIn, I'm on, daily. And I'd like to think that my Instagram is, small habit, but I guess I'm also kind of looking on there, which again tends to just be more retail therapy, let's put it that way, and inspiration.
Yeah, okay. And actually, one question which isn't scripted, but seeing as we have you, obviously this is recorded for the World Media Group. When you're partnering with media brands, what do you look for in a partner?
I guess it goes through phases. So certainly in terms of the pitch process, having what I really hate and I won't name any names, and it doesn't really happen so much these days, but there used to be a tendency where I felt that some pitches were ideas that people had had in their bottom drawer, and then they were pulled out and just like insert name here. I mean, I've even seen it where UBS is our great rival. I've seen it, oh, we could do this for UBS, and you go, well, that's interesting because we're Credit Suisse. So, those sorts of things where it's just a bit of laziness, and I'm not. I know that we all can kind of fall back, and sometimes ideas can still be good and they might be better at a certain point in time or for a certain client. I kind of get that, but I do like to have some sense of thought and so on. I think, some kind of insight or something. I try and put a lot of effort into briefings personally. I think it's really important to give a good briefing.
Yeah.
But I love it when someone presents something back and they give you a slightly different take on it, or they've really thought about the issue and pushed it on. So that kind of either originality of thought or a slightly different angle and maybe a slight challenge is really important in the briefing stage and kind of to win the work. And then when you're actually working on a project, I cannot emphasize enough the project management skills. It's no good having fantastic things being produced if it's just chaotic. And certainly I think I've learned this much more now that I'm on the client side, that things like compliance and me internally having to sell into my stakeholders is so much easier if you've got good project management. And I have to say, and we work with the NBC, we've worked with Bloomberg, Financial Times, everyone's been really great at that. And it makes a project, which can be quite a long project, and quite complicated, so much easier.
Yeah, that project management role is really interesting, isn't it? Because obviously in newsrooms, journalist side, you don't have those project management roles, and broadcast it would traditionally be producer role or the editor. But actually, increasingly, I think in the agencies and in-house studios, that project manager role, which goes across everything and is very much client facing, is so important to success when you have so many moving pieces in these larger partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be underestimated. I think it sometimes can be easy to sort of think that those admin side is, again, sort of the less important part of something. Obviously you've got, you want to have great quality, if you're doing a content partnership, great quality content and, high production values and so on. But if you don't have any of the rest of it, it's much harder to get to that point, or just so much more painful. And actually, if you work with someone, again, going back to the whole idea about relationship building, if I think being open, I'm always very open to having feedback on myself on how we can make things better on our side. How can we get to a better output? So again, at the end of every project, do a wash-up session where everyone has the same voice in the room, to say, actually, it would have been much more helpful if we'd have known up front that you had this compliance process and we could build that in, and that's good for me to learn. So I think that open conversation is critical.
Yeah, great. Well, you've made lots of project managers happy now. So what a smile to their faces. Now, outside of the office, how do you switch off, Nicky?
I probably switch attention more than switch off. I think again, kind of going back, I kind of get bored quite quickly. I think someone once said to me that there are two types of people in this world: people who relax by sitting down, or kind of lying down on a sunbed and, reading a book, or kind of just sort of being passive, or you can relax through movement. And I definitely find sort of meditation through movement. So things like gardening or hiking, walking, also Pilates and stuff like that. Actually, I very much relax by doing something, so I get in the moment. Then if I sit down, I start looking around and thinking, I should probably be doing something else. So yeah, definitely that kind of idea about meditation through movement for me, and getting outside, getting fresh air is really, really important.
Yeah, great. And finally, who or what inspires you?
I find inspiration in lots of different places. I found the way that I had some medical issues last year from COVID, and I was so humbled and inspired by the medical people that I interacted with last year. I found their patience and their grace under pressure really made me think about when I'm having a kind of, slight tantrum moment. So I think I find it very inspiring to see others who are really good at their job and they do it in a way where you just think, actually, that's really, that's awesome. So I find inspiration in sort of in people's sort of how selfless they are in those kind of careers. I also find inspiration from people who, I guess they're visionaries. So again, because I do a lot of, in holidays and things, go to places like the Lake District or, kind of outdoors, people like Octavia Hill. So Octavia Hill was one of the founders she founded the National Trust, along with a couple of other people in 1895, I think it was. And she had this quote, which is the need of quiet, the need of air, the sight of sky and things growing is basically a kind of a human need. And that idea about, getting fresh air, and particularly in those days, was that foresight and that understanding that this is what humans need to kind of really thrive. I still find that really inspirational today. And I kind of think every time I kind of go somewhere, I think that someone in had that vision and also set that emotion so that there are places that we can go to get that still today, and that carries on, I just think is extraordinary. I'm inspired by, we do work with One Young World, and Kate Robertson, she is from our industry. She was one of the founders of One Young World, which is an organisation predominantly for people under 30. It's basically for young leaders to get together. There's an annual summit every year. We send a delegation from Credit Suisse, and lots of other organisations send them, and people get sponsored as well. And I find her energy, her vision, her desire to bring change in the world, and to understand that, again, that human nature, kind of using social media and kind of bringing people together. I just find her fantastic, and I can't wait to attend the summit again this year, and it's in Manchester this year in September. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then I think just one little sort of personal story was, I love the idea of mini adventures. Kind of, I know that we're all supposed to have grand plans and grand adventures, and life gets in the way. And I find, I've got children, I work full time, I try and keep up with friends, try and keep up with family. And certainly over the last few years as well, it's kind of been increasingly challenging to just do all those things. And so I've kind of given up the idea of having like a massive big vision. If it comes, it'll come. But I think this idea about we can all have like little adventures in our life is something that I find really inspiring. And we went one weekend and we hired a boat on the Thames, and we were sailing up the Thames towards Windsor. And at one of these locks, you can all kind of come together. So there's all these very big boats and like lots of these kind of lovely leisure cruises and things. And we were tied up alongside this very small wooden boat. It got a little tiny cabin on it. Everything on it was green, bright green. The whole lot had been painted green. And it was called Sprout. And we were chatting to the guy, and it was this sort of quite elderly gentleman on it. And he said that he'd retired, and I think his wife had passed away. And he decided that he needed to have an adventure in life. So he bought this boat that was cheap, which is why I painted it all green, because it obviously needed kind of loads of work. And he just thought it was easier to just coat it all in a thick layer of paint. And he was he'd navigated from the source of the Thames out to the mouth of the Thames and was going back up again. And he was stopping and kind of going along and seeing whatever life brings on the way. And I just thought, that is amazing. It's not grand plan. It's not impacting anyone else, but he's doing something and having an incredible adventure along the way. And so to me, it's really, so one day I kind of want a Sprout, and I sort of, sometimes if I'm having a bad day, I kind of think, actually, that is achievable. That's something that I can do. So so if we next talk and I'm on a little green boat somewhere, then you'll know I've managed to make it happen. But yeah, I think you can find inspiration in lots of different places, whether that's people or situations, or sometimes just a conversation as well. But I hope
that's
not to
great,
lose that
Nicky.
sense.
After the past 2 years we've all had, I love all three of those.
I think we all need a Sprout. We need a Sprout in life to escape a little bit. So
I have no doubt you'll have a Sprout moment at some point. Thanks so much for your time. It's been lovely to talk to you again. And
it's a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicky Owen from Credit Suisse. Some really interesting and relatable insights. I hope you agree, whatever stage of a career you're at in the media marketing industry, I hope there was something in that for you. If you'd like to find out more about the World Media Group, or indeed my media life, have a look online worldmediagroup.com, or get in touch with the Chief Executive, Belinda Barker. Until the next time, do take care. Thank you.